Our moderator for the session is Umber Khairi. She's a columnist, writer, and journalist. She's one of the founders of the independent journalist-owned magazine Newsline, and she was a producer and radio broadcaster at the BBC World Service in London for almost 2 decades. Her weekly column, UK Calling, has featured the news on Sunday since 1998. She is in conversation with Tariq Alexander Qaiser, who is a versatile professional with 37 years of architectural experience, specializing in school and hospital design. He is also a noted author, filmmaker, environmentalist. Time magazine recognized his work on Karachi's mangroves in their July 2022 Oceans issue. Tariq has presented internationally, including at COP27, and is currently involved in film production and authoring a series of books on the Indus Delta, all while running his architectural practice. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and Assalamu alaikum, and thank you all for being here. You heard I'm Umber Khairi. I'm a journalist, as you heard in the introduction. And you heard Tariq's very impressive introduction as well, and I'd just like to add a little bit to that. He's an architect and has been an architect for 37 years. And in addition to that, I think he's what I would call a conscientious citizen. And you're probably thinking, okay, this guy is an architect. He's been an architect for 37 years. He's lectured here, there, and everywhere, including places like the Harvard School of Public Health. So why is he now an environmental activist? And I think basically as an architect, this is one of the things that is part of your training or your ethos of how to work with the natural world, with your surroundings, how to create something that's in harmony with nature and with the planet. So I think it's a very interesting transition. He's dedicated himself to being an environmental activist since. Yes. Okay, sorry about the sound over there. But so now Tariq is, in fact, an eco-warrior. For the past about 7 years at least, he has been studying and documenting the mangroves around Karachi Creek. And this is really an invaluable contribution to the field because the documentation is key. And nearly every week he monitors this. So he's an eco-warrior. He's trying to raise awareness of how important the mangroves are for us and how we should make sure that we save them. So the mangroves, as you know, are natural air purifiers. They're an amazing resource of nature. They provide protection from floods and storms and things like this, and we'll talk more about that. So Tariq is going to speak about the challenges he faces in the work he's doing of trying to save the mangrove forests, and he's not alone. A lot of people are working on this. How difficult it is to try and save these magic forests from being chopped and depleted, and also a little bit about what his vision is for the future. So Tariq, if we can start on this, let's start with the area that you've been monitoring around the creek. There's one particular mangrove forest that you monitor and you explore and you try to protect, and it's become sort of your beat in a way. So, can you kind of just try and locate it geographically for everybody and talk about your association with it and how that's come about? And
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी। मैं माइक को थोड़ा सा शिफ्ट कर दूं। बहुत संजीदा वक्त है और ऐसे वक्तों में अपनी हैसियत का एहसास होता है और अपनी काविशें और कोशिशों पे सवालात उठाने चाहिए, तबसरा करना चाहिए। ख़ास तौर पे आजकल जो फ़लस्तीन में हो रहा है, जो मिडल ईस्ट में हो रहा है, पूरी दुनिया में हो रहा है, इंसान के ऊपर اس کے لیے ایک چھوٹا سا لمحہ جو طویل ہونا چاہیے، دل میں طویل رکھیں، وہ میں پیش گزارش کرنا چاہتا ہوں کہ ہم لوگ کر لیں، پھر میں آگے بڑھوں۔ سوچنے کی بات یہ ہے کہ ایک درخت، ایک پودا، ایک چونٹی، ایک کیکڑا، ایک مچھی، انسان کی کوشش جینے کی اور زندگی بسانے کی، اور جن مشکلات سے وہ آگے بڑھتے ہیں اور اپنی زندگیوں اور اپنے بچوں کی زندگیوں کو سنبھالنے کی کوشش کرتے ہیں، یہ ایک اکلوتی چیز نہیں ہوتی۔ اٹس ناٹ اے سنگل ایونٹ، اٹس اے کنٹینیوس ایونٹ that we have experienced and do experience throughout generations, throughout the history of mankind, throughout the history of life and living also. It's very important that we understand our circumstances and our positions, and I feel a very heavy burden, which we all do currently. And I question, میں اپنے آپ سے سوال اٹھاتا ہوں کہ میں ایسے وقتوں پہ ایک پیڑ، ایک جنگل اور اس کے اندر مخلوق سے محبت کرتا ہوں، کیا انسانوں سے یہ کم محبت کا اظہار ہے؟ نہیں، it is a joint existence. We are dependent and interdependent on all life forms. And ہمارا جو کراچی کا شہر ہے وہ سمندر کے ساحل پہ ہے، اور کراچی کا شہر جو ہے وہ ایک چیز کے لیے بہت مشہور ہوتا تھا، وہ ہے کراچی بریز، اور اس کی وجوہات جس کے بارے میں بعد میں بات کروں گا وہ کم ہوتی جا رہی ہیں۔ تو اگر ہم خدا کی نعمتوں، برکتوں کی دیکھ بھال نہیں کرتے تو انسانیت جو ختم ہوتی ہوئی نظر آتی ہے وہ ہماری حرکتیں، ہماری باتوں میں اظہار ہوتی ہیں کہ اگر ہم قدرت کی دیکھ بھال نہیں کر سکتے، اگر ہم خدا کی نعمتوں کی دیکھ بھال نہیں کر سکتے تو ہم انسانوں کو بھی نہیں کر رہے، اور یہ نظر آ رہا ہے۔ تو اس سے میں شروع کرنا چاہتا ہوں۔ یہ سوچ میرے دل میں ہے، ہم سب کے دل میں ہے، آگے بھی بڑھانا چاہتا ہوں، اظہار کرنا چاہتا ہوں۔ یہ نقشہ کراچی کا ہے، کراچی کا فیز 8 آپ کو ادھر نظر آ رہا ہے، الٹے ہاتھ پہ کماڑی، اور ہریالی جو نظر آ رہی ہے، the green is the mangroves of Sandspit and Hawke's Bay. On the right hand side, the eastern side, are the mangroves of our Indus River Delta. This is the extreme east of Delta. This is the edge of Delta. اسی پہ میں یہ کام کرتا ہوں۔ آگے بڑھا دیں پلیز۔ My focus has been on this particular island and its neighboring island, Mandal Island. The verses were very heartfelt. I feel great pain when I visit these forests. I feel great pleasure. I am extremely grateful for the experience. I am in an environment, Umber, which is my habitat of comfort. On weekends, I exist in the swamp. You've been with me several times. And the oneness that you experience is spiritual. Nature is such. And all of us who are involved with the natural world have experienced it on many levels. मैं दिल से इतना शुक्रगुजार हूँ कि मुझे ये मौका मिला है कि ये लम्हे जो हैं मेरी ज़िंदगी में मुस्तकिल आते रहते हैं और जिस चीज़ का एहसास रहता है वो ये रहता है कि एक वक्त आता है जहाँ हमें अलविदा करना पड़ता है इस दुनिया को. And before it is my time to leave, it's extremely important to have expressed the wonder and the joy that exists. And it does exist, in spite of all. But so the human presence, its qualities and its horrific potential has a duality. And you experience this, Umber, in these forests.
So, Tariq, if I can just say, like at the beginning of this year, I think you did a post which had like 2 photographs. One from, I think, 2 years ago of a lush, green, thriving mangrove forest, and one, a more recent one, which was all cut down and a bare, almost desert-like area. And what you'd written with it was almost like it had a sense of you feeling completely bereaved. जैसे कोई फौतगी हो गई हो या कोई इस तरह से सानिया हो गया हो तो आपको इस तरह से वो महसूस हो रहा था. तो ये जो एक चीज़ है ये क्यों इतना सानिया है क्यों ये थोड़ा समझाएं हमें.
देखें सानिया भी है और बहुत आला चीज़ भी है एक साथ एग्जिस्ट करती है. रंग नहीं होते कायनात में ज़िंदगी में दुनिया में. रंग समझे जाते हैं परसीव होते हैं सिर्फ. There is light and there is no light. And ये duality जो है दोनों एक साथ रहती है. सानिया है मगर उसके साथ साथ बहुत बहुत आला चीज़ें भी हो रही हैं. पाकिस्तान में सानिया से पहले अच्छी बातों की बात भी करें अब हैं. पाकिस्तान में जो काम हो रहा है मैंग्रोव्स पे जंगलात पे वो बहुत आला है. It is seminal, the work that is being done. The replantation of the delta, 6,000 square kilometers of arid delta. It is the largest arid delta of the world. It is the 7th largest mangrove delta of the world, including all the ones in Belize and South America and Venezuela, etc. And they're very, very important to the ecology of the world. I had the privilege of presenting a film at the COP last year, and I'd like to share that because the stories that are told in that are true. They exist and they're facts. And the work is there that needs to be praised. But there are stories that you can tell, and there are stories that you are not allowed to tell. There are stories that you should tell internationally. And there are stories that need to be told to all of us here, because it is our responsibility to ensure that what can be fixed and should be fixed. So I took this movie. I was asked by the Climate Ministry to produce this film. So we produced it, and they said, but you know, Tariq, there's a lot of good stories. And I said, absolutely. And said, we need to tell the good stories. So we took the opportunity to tell the good stories and highlight the fact that we needed to get together in Karachi to discuss the negative, the tragedies, the sanya that is happening also along with the good. So I'd like to, Umber, if I may, I'd like to present the COP movie
Oh yeah, absolutely.
that
But
I produced.
just quickly remind people why it is a tragedy and why it's so important to replant. Like खूबियाँ क्या हैं, मतलब फ़वाइद क्या हैं mangroves के?
So the mangroves are this incredible ecosystem. It's an intertidal plant. Intertidal plant means that it exists between low tide and high tide. तो जब चांद और सूरज की वजह से पानी, समंदर का पानी नीचे जाता है, उसकी सतह जब नीचे होती है तो बहुत सारी रेत और समंदर का साहिल नज़र आने लगता है. फिर जब चांद और सूरज की पोजीशन चेंज होती है तो पानी चढ़ता रहता है. तो आप कभी साहिल पे एक दिन के लिए बैठे हैं, आपको बिल्कुल नज़र आएगा. ये एक कांस्टेंट नहीं है. आप समझें कि दो घड़ियां हैं जो एक दूसरे के साथ काम करती हैं, तो वो हर रोज़ एक चांद के टाइम, चांद के हिसाब से चलती है, दूसरी जो है सूरज के हिसाब से चलती है. तो ये एक दुनिया पैदा कर देती है जो दैट इज़ एक्सट्रीमली यूनिक. I'm going to mix Urdu and English if I may, because I know there's some people here who might appreciate both the languages. So ये दुनिया जो exist करती है, इसमें ख़ास मखलूक का जन्म हुआ है. The plants, the animals, they live both underwater and above water. There are fish that can walk, that can climb trees. There are fish that can breathe outside water for 5 days. There are crustaceans that live underwater. There are worms that are 5 feet long. There are plants that breathe through their roots and expel salt from their leaves. And some of this is expressed in this film. But the mangroves are very important because they not only produce oxygen, it's the 4th largest oxygen producer. They are also a nursery to all the fisheries and the phytoplankton and the zooplankton and the krill and food source. They protect our cities from tsunamis and sea surges and essentially let all forms of life exist and procreate and flourish. And when you cut them, you cut a lifeblood of existence for not just the coastal cities and the coastal people, but you cut the lifeblood of life. The most important is the phytoplankton, which is very dependent on these also. But today is not a botany or a biology talk.
No, but we need to.
But essentially, they're paramountly important for the existence of life forms, specifically also for the existence of for us and our economic structures that are there.
And from that, we should go to the climate summit film, Hannah.
We are tree huggers, and for reasons clear to us, we are drawn to these swamps, to these magical lives, and to these trees that exist within them. Even though these mangroves live only for 60 to 80 years, they form into incredible trees. Trunks with persona and character, arms that embrace and provide birch, roots that network and breathe. Nourishing antibiotic leaves that expel salt. These trees are at risk, but the fact that they sequester carbon in the soil at incredible rates might save them. I'm Tariq Alexander Qaiser. My friends and I have been observing and photographing these mangroves and lives that exist in these complex and supremely beneficial ecosystems for over a decade. Our delta is vast, 3 times the size of Mauritius, 6,000 kilometers square. Its eastern part is arid and needs replantation. The efforts by the Office of the Conservator of Mangroves and other private organizations here in Pakistan has been seminal. The western part has the most mature and the densest of mangrove forests. It also needs help. Here is a story of regeneration and survival. Karachi exists on the edge of delta. It is the extreme west of the Indus River's deltic estuaries. The greatest detailed record of this place is from the time of Alexander the Great. This delta has been at the crossroads of the human story, and once again is of vital importance to the world and to all of us, but in its natural state. For Karachi and our coastal communities, these trees provide protection from tsunamis and sea level rise. They are the lungs of our tree-starved city and remove toxins from our effluent-filled water discharge. For Pakistan, these ecosystems are vital to our fisheries. Here are the nurseries for marine life. For the world, this delta is absolutely necessary in its ability to mitigate the adverse effects of climate change. Pakistan's 6,000 square kilometers of delta are a nature-based solution for today. We all need this vast ecosystem to remain a reserve for nature.
To bring back the glory of Delta, it is necessary to restore it, and that restoration is needed. So far, we have devised various ways to restore the mangrove ecosystem. We collect seed and propagules of the various species, then we raise nurseries, and after that, field planting is carried out through communities. So by this action, in last 30 years, we have restored about 200,000 hectares. So this restoration process need to be continued till we bring back that glory. For that, funding on sustained basis would be required.
The eastern part of the delta doesn't receive sweet or much brackish water anymore. Seawater intrusion has changed large areas of previous agricultural lands into intertidal and supratidal zones. Halophytes, mangroves, can be grown here, even under wind turbines. Their growth is slow, but when protected from the trampling and grazing of camels and the chainsaw of woodcutters, they do survive. Towards the west, in the islands of Karachi, the mangroves become taller and denser. The growth here is fast and profuse. But urban growth is encroaching onto the forests. Effluent and waste flows into the estuaries. It is a serious problem, but this outflow has provided brackish water in which the mangroves are thriving, especially on Karachi's islands. For us residents of Pakistan's coastal cities to survive with grace, we need these ecosystems to remain. These wildernesses need to remain forest reserves, protected and maintained.
There's some really beautiful images there. Really beautiful. And I hope everyone in the audience was able to see, appreciate that even with these bright lights. And I mean, Tariq, some of these, I was there when you filmed them. And when you actually go into the mangroves, you realize how much of there's a little ecosystem, micro system over there. That's the shrimps dancing, on the flamingos taking off, or the kind of birds that you see. So this was a good news film, because it was about, there's a lot of replantation going on, and like happens quite a lot in Pakistan, there is good work going on, but it's outweighed and overshadowed by the corruption and the destruction. But it's still going on. Now, there's a lot of replantation going on that you showed. So do we have to stop worrying about the mangroves now?
Worry deeply. वैसे फिक्र है बात, काम बहुत अच्छा हो रहा है. ये एक साहब का नाम इधर आया था, ताहिर कुरैशी साहब, ये बाबा मैंग्रोव्स कहलाते हैं. Tahir Saab was this incredible man that trained a generation of foresters. It's another story, deep story, but I was privileged to be one of the last people who actually had a conversation and an interview and was able to interview him. He trained these young people, mostly men, who are now running the mangrove forestry division. And out of all the government departments the few that I've actually interacted with, this lot is incredibly motivated and knowledgeable. They are constrained. They're constrained financially, they're constrained politically, they're constrained, their hands are tied. But wherever they can, and they have, and they are doing incredible work. And that they are the reason for the success of our mangrove replantation, the reason why we make headlines, why we are called one of the big success stories. The Time magazine listed Pakistan, Time magazine, when they were doing my article, they listed Pakistan in the green list. That is huge. But there is a caveat, because wherever there is a natural resource that is adjacent to our cities and our habitations, the pressures for financial gain, for future projections of earnings, for development are huge. And the natural environment suffers and is suffering. Karachi, throughout, to beyond Port Qasim, if you all know the geography, has the largest and the greenest of mangroves, and the reason for that is that they get more sweet water, and the pH of the water is very, very conducive to one particular species. We used to have 8 species, they became 7, then they became slowly atrophied, they became extinct or started dying out, and there were 3, then there were 2, and the largest one is what's called the Avasina marina. That is, those are most of the trees that you saw, and they're hardy. Again, we won't go into the depths of it, but because of the effluent that we pump out, this particular tree is resilient and can take care of the toxins and can live in a wider range of brackish and sweetish water. So its growth spurt is huge. So whatever, and I'm looking at people to make sure that this message is passed on, whichever area has greater amount of sweet water, there the Avasina marina and the Rhizophora will grow profusely. In 2 years, its growth would be this much. In about 10 years, it would be higher than the screen. In the further delta, where the Indus River has died and the water is not sweet, it's very salty, the growth in the same 10 years, and I'm witness to that, will grow from here to maximum here, less than half the size. Katie Bandha, I photographed and documented plantation in 2015, and I did it in 2022. Okay. In those 8 years or so, the growth is maybe 1.5 feet. On Bundle Island, Kiprianwala, the islands that I showed in the map, those trees would be higher than this thing. So it's very important to understand that the plantation and the credits, the carbon credits that need to be achieved, need to be done also within the areas around Karachi. Those particular trees, the ones I showed you, most of those images do not exist anymore, Umber, and you know that. You've seen it. I would like to show some of that, because the tragedy is this, that we are working on replanting the delta at a rate that has not been seen anywhere in the world. We've broken world records in plantation. And yes, of course, the optics and the photo ops for that were fabulous, but they were correct and justified. Why not if you're doing good work? But 7% of the delta, 7% only, has the largest trees. The trees 30, 40 feet. When I started going into this delta about 15 years ago, the tree canopy was 65, 65, 65, 65 फुट ऊंचे पेड़ थे. उनके तने जो थे 4-4 फुट, 3-3 फुट. ठीक है, जो तस्वीर थी मेरी, उसका 4 फुट का तना है. सब कट रहे. तो पहले चंद सालों में ये 65 से जाके 65 फीट से जाके 40-45 फीट, 45-40 फीट पे हुए. आज मैं अगर आपको उन्हीं जंगलात में ले जाऊंगा जहां मेरे पास तस्वीरें हैं 2011-2012 की, जहां 65 फुट के पेड़ थे, वहां 20-25 फुट से ऊंचे पेड़ नहीं हैं. ब्राह्मणी चील रहती है, वो गोल्डन ईगल की तरह लगती है. वो we photographed them. You were at one of those trips where we did that. They have moved from Bundle Island because the trees are not tall enough for them to feel comfortable. Last year they moved back because the trees in the neighboring islands also are not tall enough. So these are, we are taking away our natural histories, our environments that need to be protected and maintained. These are not aesthetic decisions, these are life decisions. And if we cannot, you know, it's a caveat. I mean, do we remain sensitized to the tragedies that humans are suffering? They are suffering, it's painful. Does the value of the suffering of the natural environment, right, have to be ignored for that? Does it become an excuse? There is a lack of governance. There's a lack of taking care of the people that need to be taken care of. It results in acts that are undertaken for survival. I'd like to show you, Umber, if I may, I'd like to show you the imagery of what was and what is. There's an absolute need for survival. These images, 2021, 2 weeks ago.
So here we are on Bundle Island. It's the 11th of December. We've entered at low tide, at a rising tide. Wood is piled up, kept ready to be removed. The cutting has by no means stopped here. These forests cannot last very long if the cutting is not stopped. These are not dead trees that have fallen. These are freshly cut trees.
This footage is important because I wanted to put the context of Karachi's backyard. Where they will be. The question is, what all is for sale? The boats move past security checkposts multiple times a day. This doesn't exist anymore. It has disappeared, been cut in front of my eyes. I have cried for trees from the very earliest of my memories. Perhaps I was built that way, and I'm thankful that I was. Because when you cry for a tree, you do not cry for the wood. You cry for the future. You cry for your children, your grandchildren, their children. When you plant a tree, you do not, the axiom, you don't plant it to sit in its shade. You plant it so that your progeny can sit in its shade. And removing a forest of this scale and nature from a city, from the outskirts of a city of like Karachi, is a major tragedy. And if I can't effect change to create the nature reserve, I pray that I can effect change in someone's heart and in someone's mind, that perhaps regeneration and regrowth on all aspects is possible. Protected. Should be replanted. But
I stand as witness that these forests are being cut.
So that is very powerful footage, and that's why I think your project and all the work you're doing is so important, because it's documenting this from week to week, from year to year. It's a very powerful record. And your testimony over there, as you've shown. So, I mean, I think this is an amazing, you're archiving what's going on. You talked about stories that can be told and stories that you have to think about telling. What are the forces behind the cutting of the mangroves? Is it an organized racket? Is it just local people chopping? And isn't there legislation, recent legislation, that actually it's illegal to chop any mangroves?
these are protected forests. It's the gazetted protected forests, and the laws are in place, and they're very good laws. The wood also is cut and sold at 200 rupees a month. How much does that make it to a kilo? 20 rupees a kilo. A lot of our tandoors use it. A lot of small industries use it. There was one pharmaceutical company that was buying pharmaceutical chemicals that was being produced by cut mangroves. The board found out and shut that company's products down, and I'm very thankful for that, and I'm also grateful that it was partially my messages that created the awareness. So there's no profit in wood. And the people who cut wood are desperate, and they're hungry, and they're poor. They're poor. I mean, the poverty level is incredible. Currently, after 7 years of documenting and filming them, 5 years of filming, 7 years of photographing, and then the previous years were spent in the joy of the beauty of this forest, because they are incredibly beautiful. But the real work that I did, that I've been trying to do, has been this last few years, 7 years or so. And this is the first time I am now facing hostility from the locals. They know me, to the point that last trip I went up to people who I could hear the axe cuts. They were pretending to do something else, but it was evening, it was dusk, it was almost dark. And they, people who knew my face would laugh and, आज इतनी लकड़ी ली है हमने सिर्फ, या आज हमने इतनी मच्छी पकड़ी है या केकड़ा पकड़ा है, whatever. They refused to even make eye contact. So I took my boat up to them and I said, "Ke bhai, kya hai? Aaj to salam bhi nahi kar rahe." And so begrudgingly they did. So what does that mean? It means that probably the message is going to places where their lives and their livelihoods are being impacted. And is that success? Is that failure? I don't know. Who is under control? It's hearsay. I'm not an investigative journalist. I am a bearer of messages. And if I were to venture as to who's responsible, it would be irresponsible for me, Umber. But it is not simple, because the cost of fuel, of diesel, to bring a boat about 5 kilometers into this island, load up this with about 20 people, and sell the wood for 20 rupees a kilo is not viable. So these are stories that the journalists need to pick up. These are stories, they're important stories, and they're deep stories. My understanding is not there. It's hearsay. They're assumptions. Assumptions are not responsible. They're not reportage. And you are a journalist. You understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I am a bearer of messages. I am a receptacle of images. And I have resigned myself to be that. My archives exist. The YouTube channel is there with almost all the videos. They're there for students and researchers. It's my opinions don't matter. What matters is what you believe in, whether these forests need to be maintained, retained, protected, or whether we should, as an architect, as a number of architects sitting out here, whether we should allow our clients, or whether we should work for our clients to build cities, islands, when we don't need them and that we have enough resources.
There might be some architects who say, yeah, let's just
Of course there
reclaim
are.
the land,
Of course there are.
build.
But it's not just the developers. This thing is the financial gains are what are the real challenges, and the financial gains are not just the buildings. So it's very deep, and it's a long view.
So we need to leave a little bit of time for
For the
questions.
question answers,
So
yeah.
at the end, you spoke about this, but you have envisioned ways to make this happen and a way forward. Like one of them was a nature reserve around Bundle Island, which would employ locals and also be a kind of center. So
Yeah, I don't think we have got 15 minutes. I'd rather have questions.
Okay.
So I'll answer this one. I have a video which I'm not going to show. We'll show it some other time. It's no, this one's not on my YouTube as yet. We've designed floating learning centers, nature reserves. Absolutely, they're not zero carbon, very low carbon footprint that don't impact the ecosystem, other than a couple of tires with concrete that act as anchors, and they float with the tide. Spaces where you can take people in to teach them about the mangroves. Spaces where the caretakers can come. Nurseries that can be planted there and where and how. What is extremely important for people who have friends, and I see several people who have friends who are in the replantation business, is for the message to be sent that it is very important to respect and understand intertidal ecosystems and plant the intertidal plants, the halophytes, in places where they can grow, in methodologies which are conducive to the growth of a plant that needs to live in water and out of water at the same time. Avicenna marina will grow in your garden if you water it daily. But we will live in a jail. Will we thrive? Will we survive? You'll survive. Will you thrive? No. You need your environment. So the analogy is a very simple one. Yes, you can say, I'll plant the Avicenna marina on a floodplain. It's happening. Please look at an Arab news article, the recent one about the success story, and analyze that photograph. Some of you have received that post of mine. Analyze that photograph. Very important. because many times the people who manage the projects don't understand the technicalities of the botany and the biology and the ecosystem requirements for these plants. Engage subject experts. There's a lot of them in the world. Karachi University has incredible organizations. Engage people like that who will explain the ecosystem so that your success story, which is already created, is not diluted, so that the plantation that we do is sustained and has growth and actually benefits not only capitalism and the financial bank accounts, but the capital of our globe and our environment and our ecosystems.
Yes.
It is lacking.
Okay. So we have, Tariq, about just less than 15 minutes for questions. So question Urdu mein kare, Angrezi mein kare, jo marzi. So do we have a mic? There some questions yahan beech mein. Inke fauran haath ud gaye the.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Madiha Arsalan. I must congratulate you, Mr. Tariq, for loving these trees and the ecosystem. I'm one of the Green Panthers as well. I've got 3 questions, so I'm going to quickly ask them. My first question is, all the toxins go into the sea, right? All the chemicals, the toxins, the gutter water, sewage, whatever you say. So what could be another way to dispose them? One. Second, you talked about Time Magazine and the green listing. So I want to know what this green listing is, because as a feature writer myself, I would like to write about it. And then my third question, though not the last, is it did not make sense to me that the wood is sold for 20 rupees. It did not make any sense to me that the wood, the trees are sold for 20 rupees a kg. Where is the forest department? Where is the protection of these mangroves?
One of the reasons I have received hostility is because the forest department has been effective in hauling these people up. I made a short film about boats with holes. Some of you have seen it. So I went to the boat that was being salvaged and asked, and he said, we hit a tree trunk and our boat got a hole. It was rotten and it sank. And the forest department, 3 days later, when I met with them, they said, yes, see this man? He was on my video, that young man. He says, was there a concrete block in the boat? I said, yes. He said, that was my block. He said, I sank the boat. So the forest department is active. They'd given these people warnings. There was a jirga, the jirga was held, the jirga found them guilty, and at the end of the hour, the jirga said, these are poor people, we also rule that you let them go. And so the forest department gave a warning, you do it again, we'll sink your boat. And so they sank their boat. Okay. So the forest department, this lot of people at the mangrove forest department are the good guys. Of course, but the forest department is not everywhere. They have no arms, they have no boats. They have 2 boats that looks after, maybe, I don't think they have even 3. They have 2 boats that I know of that looks after 6,000 square kilometers of delta. I mean, it's the most ridiculous of things.
Very under-resourced.
Totally under-resourced. Yeah. And they are working. They are also planting. They are also organizing the planting for so many of the projects. Private as well as the main company that is handling it. Resources need to be, I'm an advocate for them to be supported, but it needs to be supported by the private sector, away from the organization that's doing the plantation.
But with public pressure.
With public pressure and public oversight.
Okay, the green list she asked about, and then I think we can move on to another question.
Time Magazine, 2022, July 4th, Oceans issue. Just Google it, you'll get it. It had several articles. There was one on the work I was doing. That was the large one. Then there was a world map where one expert had written on this and highlight spaces of ecological marine importance and critical impact. Pakistan was not red. Pakistan was green because of the forest department's work, and they listed that there is a campaign underway to try and save the mangroves of Karachi's coast.
That's a good news.
News is news, but who reads it? You haven't read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Who reads it? Who takes action on it? I feel good about it. I was thrilled, you know.
Yeah. We need
My daughter congratulated me. It's a big deal. Okay. That was huge for me. But what impact does it have? It opens doors. It opened enough doors that I got invited to do the film. It was an opportunity. The opportunity was there to tell the good story, but make sure that everyone is aware that there is a negative story too. And the negative story needs to be discussed here. And I'm very happy with
So
the
let's
faces
move
I'm
on
seeing.
to another question, because there's
Yes.
No, my
very little
first
time.
question was about the disposal of toxins.
Sewage treatment plants, we take care of nothing. The Avicina marina plant is this magic plant that can survive in it, but that doesn't mean that you have to survive in a toxic environment, especially not in your house. Karachi's coastline is our house. Our own Char Diwari is our house.
Okay, so
We will not tolerate it there. Why should we tolerate it in our city?
who else had a question? Somebody else. There we go.
First of all, I'd like to thank you and commend you for the wonderful work that you're doing. I have two small questions. Number one, the carbon credits that you may earn through the reforestation, does any of that money go to the local people? And secondly is another question which is kind of connected to this. When these people are prevented from cutting these forests, is there any way to compensate them for their loss of livelihood?
20 rupees a kilo is not livelihood. It's slavery. Why is it enslavement? I'm asking a question. I don't expect an answer. They're obvious. The opportunities for the coastal communities to have work needs to expand beyond what is the obvious. There's fishing and. If you do not provide a population source of income, they are dependent on handouts, and the handouts are not only benevolent. We know that. These are the realities of our life out here. How do you create an ecosystem, an environment, an ecology of equity? There is a problem. It's a problem that goes beyond the mandate of what we can discuss out here. But do these people in whose areas the plantation is being undertaken earn something? Yes, a certain amount. How much? I don't know. Visibly, they are as hungry. Visibly, they have as few medical facilities. There's a huge problem of mother and child health in these areas. There's a huge problem of skin diseases, liver, kidney problems because they are drinking brackish water. There is an abject failure of us, of you and me, in allowing and accepting the existence in our communities of environments and habitations that should not exist. It is criminal. And there needs to be a wake-up call. There needs to be a greater equity. The amount of money that is being earned by the current carbon credits is going to be limited. It's huge right now. But when capitalism sees an opportunity like this, then the pie is grabbed and as much of the pie is kept. Equity.
So
Equity.
Just to come in, this is a problem with conservation and projects. Is basically how do you make the local community stakeholders in the conservation process? So this is you have to have various people working together on that and have to have a will and a plan. But we're running out of time now. So just before, I'm sorry. Well, the thing is, people come up with 1 and 2 questions, so that takes up a lot of time. If it can be one very brief question, Binu, can we just go to that gentleman first, because he put his hand up. We only have like 4 minutes left, so it has to be one brief sentence question.
This is Tariq Sial. Actually, my question related the incursion of the sea towards the Keti Bandar, other coastal areas. You know that due to the lack of fresh water from the Indus, because the people here in Punjab and Kepi and upper areas view that this water is wasting. But actually the problem is, you know, that you are the working on ground, that due to lack of fresh water availability, that's why also the lack of these forests as well. So what's your suggestion, how much water can be released there, that these issues cannot be created then?
Okay, sorry Tariq, can we just get Binu's question? Yes. And then you can answer them together.
Binu.
Thank you. Tariq, around the world, young people are leading environmental activism and change. How do you evaluate what's happening with young people in Karachi? Are they becoming more aware of this? Are they handling this, or is this like a problem in itself? Are they getting more aware?
May I dare ask you if you're saying that I'm not young anymore?
No, I meant
young people are motivated. I've been running courses. They are incredible. Out of all the courses I've run and the attendance I've had, it's been the ladies, it's been the girls.
Okay.
They are incredible. They are motivated. They are capable, and they want to do something.
I think we have about 1 minute now.
Okay. Yes, I think there's hope. I think there's hope because they see it's their future. आपका जो सवाल है ना, वो उसकी जड़ है 1800 में जब बराजेस बने और डैम्स बने। एक ख़त मुझे मिला था, एक प्ली पिटिशन थी जिसके ऊपर ख़त गया था, जिस पे लोकल्स ने डेल्टा में, सिंध के डेल्टा में लोकल्स ने एतराज़ किया था कि हमें मैंग्रोव्स नहीं काटने, बचाने हैं, बिकॉज़ उधर सरकार ने, उस वक्त के सरकार ने डिक्री कर दिया था कि डेल्टा के मैंग्रोव्स काट दो, उधर कोई फसलें लगा दो, बिकॉज़ मीठा पानी आ रहा है तो चावल उग जाएगा। तो केटी बंदर में चावल की काश्त होती थी, करेक्ट? Oh, huge! It was fabulous. I mean, the entire Talpur era, that entire delta was fabulous. Sindbad Talpur era का बंदा था, ठीक है? वो जाके पायरेट बन गया, एडवेंचरर बन गया, उसके ऊपर कहानियाँ लिख दी। उन्हीं सदियों में अरेबियन नाइट्स की जो स्टोरीज में सिंदबाद को डाला गया। सिंदबाद मेरी नज़र में हमारा बंदा था, सिंध का, ठीक है? सिंदबाद। मगर ये ऐसी जगह थी जिस पे फोल्कलोर और लेजेंड्स बने हुए हैं, मगर फिर जाके उस वक्त कटाई करके चावल की काश्त होती थी, ठीक है जी? अच्छा, एक वक्त आया 1800 मिड 1800s में कि और इलाकों को काटने की इंस्ट्रक्शन दी गई। विलेजर्स ने अपने बड़ों से करवा के ब्रिटिश कोर्ट्स में पिटिशन डलवा दी कि नहीं काटने, ये हमारी लाइफ ब्लड है, हमें बचाते हैं। वही जो हम कह रहे हैं। ये
अब हमारा वक्त जो है वो ख़त्म हो रहा है।
तो ये है, तो ये बहुत लंबी और तवील प्रॉब्लम है। तो पानी कम है, डेल्टा मरेगा। कोई भी ऐसी चीज़ है ये नहीं है जो हमेशा के लिए जी सकती है, ना तो आप, ना मैं, ना तो हमारा डेल्टा, ना तो पेड़। मगर جو چیز ہاتھ میں ہے اور جس کی ہم دیکھ بھال کر سکتے ہیں وہ ہم پہ فرض بنتا ہے کہ ہم اس کی دیکھ بھال رکھیں. اور
چلیں باتیں بہت سی
آگے
ہیں
بڑھاتے
کرنے کی، لیکن یہ کہ اب ہمارا وقت ختم ہو چکا ہے. سو جسٹ موونگ فارورڈ، دا تھیم آف دا festival is people, planet and possibilities. So you have possibilities. People can save the planet and save the environment, and you are doing it. Thank you very much.
تھینک یو. نکلتے ہوئے بس ایک گزارش یہ ہے، جہاں موقع ملے آپ یہ کہیں کہ کراچی کے جزیروں پہ جہاں مینگرووز اگ سکتے ہیں اور اگ رہی ہیں، ان کو چھوڑ دیا جائے، اگ جائیں گے، ادھر آپ قدرتی ذخیرے بنائیں، ایسی جگہیں بنائیں جہاں ہماری آنے والی پشتیں جو ہیں وہ فخر سے کہہ سکیں کہ ہمارے والدین نے، ہمارے باپ ماں نے یہ، یا دادا دادی نے، نانی نے یہ ہمارے لیے چھوڑ کے رکھا ہے. اسی طریقے سے ہماری جو اولادیں ہیں وہ صحت مند اور خوشحال زندگیاں گزار سکتی ہیں. یہ نعرہ نہیں ہے، یہ اصلیت ہے. تو آپ کا بہت بہت شکریہ.
Thank you very much for attending this session, and we hope to see you tomorrow, inshallah, for a full packed program.